I raised my stepdaughter like my own, but when she got pregnant, she publicly announced I wasn't her real mom and said her baby deserved a better mother than she had. So I finally cut off every bit of financial and emotional support. After years of sacrifice and being taken for granted, I met David when I was 32. He was 35, and his daughter Emma was 9. Emma's biological mother had left when she was 4, struggling with addiction and mental health issues that prevented her from properly caring for Emma. David had full custody, and Emma rarely saw her biological mother, perhaps once or twice a year for supervised visits that often ended in disappointment when her mother didn't appear. When David and I began dating, I was careful not to quickly insert myself into Emma's life. I knew how challenging it could be for children to accept a new person in their parents' lives. I had never been married or had children of my own, but I'd always longed to be a mother. I found myself drawn to both David and Emma from the very start. Emma was quiet and timid initially, yet she was also curious and intelligent. I could see she yearned for the attention and stability that had often been absent in her early years. David and I took things slowly for about 6 months before I started spending more time at their house and becoming involved in Emma's daily routine. I helped with homework, packed lunches, and drove her to soccer practice and lessons. Gradually, Emma began to warm to me and accept me as a part of her life. David and I married when Emma was 11. By then, she had started calling me Mom without me ever asking, which made me feel like I had finally found my life's purpose. I loved her as my own child and wanted to give her all the stability and affection she had missed in her early years. I attended every school event and parent-teacher conference, helped with science fair projects and book reports, taught her how to cook, do laundry, and manage money. I was there for every scraped knee, broken heart, and teenage drama that arose over the years. David worked long hours as an engineer and traveled frequently, so I often handled the day-to-day parenting responsibilities. I loved every minute of it, even when it was exhausting and challenging. Emma and I developed a close bond over the years. She confided in me about everything, from friend disputes to boy troubles to her anxieties about the future. I helped her. Through her first heartbreak at 15, supported her when she wanted to quit piano for soccer, and spent countless hours assisting her with college applications and scholarship essays during her senior year of high school. When she got accepted to the state university with a partial academic scholarship, I was so proud I cried. I felt all the hard work and love I had invested in her over the years had been worth it. Emma studied business in college and performed well academically, though she sometimes struggled with anxiety and self-doubt that I believe stemmed from her early childhood experiences with her biological mother. I made sure she had access to counseling services at school and checked in with her regularly to ensure she was taking care of herself and not becoming overwhelmed with coursework and social pressures. David and I visited her at school several times each semester, and she came home for holidays and summer breaks. Our relationship remained strong and close throughout her college years. After Emma graduated, she moved back home for a few months, while job searching. During that time, she met Sean at a friend's party. Sean was a few years older than Emma and worked at a company. He seemed like a decent young man, though I sometimes felt he was a bit immature and not quite ready for a serious relationship. But Emma fell hard for him instantly, and within 6 months, they were discussing moving in together and getting engaged. This made me nervous because I thought they were rushing things and didn't truly know each other well enough yet. Emma found a job at a financial planning firm and moved in with Sean after about 8 months of dating. I tried to be supportive, even though I had some concerns about their relationship dynamic. Sean seemed to exert a lot of influence over Emma's decisions and opinions. I noticed she started shifting some of her values and priorities to align with his, which worried me because she had always been such an independent and strong-willed person. David and I regularly invited them for dinner and tried to maintain a good relationship with both of them, but I could tell Emma was pulling away from us somewhat as her relationship with Sean grew more serious. When Emma was 24, she called me one evening to tell me she was pregnant. While I was surprised, knowing they weren't married yet and hadn't planned to start a family so soon, I was also excited about becoming a grandmother and told her how happy I was for them. Emma seemed nervous and uncertain about the pregnancy at first, but she said Sean was thrilled, and they were planning to marry before the baby was born, which seemed like the right thing to do, even if the timing wasn't ideal. I immediately started thinking about all the ways I could help Emma prepare for motherhood and support her through her pregnancy and the early months with the baby. I had saved money over the years specifically for occasions like this, and I was planning to help them with nursery furniture, baby clothes, and whatever else they needed to get ready for their first child. I started researching cribs, car seats, and strollers, and I was looking forward to going shopping with Emma, helping her register for baby gifts, and planning a baby shower. About 2 weeks after Emma told me about the pregnancy, she and Sean came over for Sunday dinner, a long-standing family tradition. Emma seemed different that day, more distant and formal than usual. I could tell something was bothering her, but I didn't want to pressure her to talk if she wasn't ready. After dinner, while David and Sean were watching football in the living room, Emma asked if she could speak with me privately in the kitchen. I thought she might want to discuss pregnancy concerns or ask for advice about something. Emma sat down at the kitchen table and looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. She told me that she and Sean had been discussing the baby and their future together, and they had decided they wanted to ensure their child grew up knowing the truth about their family relationships and not being confused about who their real relatives were. I didn't understand what she meant at first, so I asked her to clarify. Emma took a deep breath and told me she appreciated everything I had done for her over the years, but she wanted me to understand that I wasn't her real mother and never had been. Now that she was going to be a mother herself, she wanted to ensure her child understood the difference between biological family and chosen family. She said her baby would have a real mother, unlike her, and she didn't want any confusion about my role in their lives going forward. I couldn't breathe for a moment. I asked Emma what she meant by saying her baby would have a real mother unlike her. Emma explained that she had been thinking a lot about her own childhood and how confusing it had been to have me acting like her mother when I wasn't truly her mother. She had decided she didn't want to put her own child through that same experience. She said she and Sean wanted to be very clear about family boundaries and ensure their child knew exactly who their biological parents were and who was just a step relative. I tried to remain calm and asked Emma if she was implying that all the years I had spent raising, caring for, and being there for her didn't matter because I wasn't her biological mother. Emma said that of course it mattered, and she was grateful for everything I had done, but that didn't change the fact that I wasn't her real mother, and she didn't want her child to be confused about that distinction. She said she had discussed it extensively with Sean, and they both agreed it was important to be honest about family relationships from the beginning. Tears started to well in my eyes. I asked Emma if this meant she no longer considered me her mother. She replied that I had been like a mother to her, but I wasn't actually her mother. Now that she was going to be a real mother herself, she understood the difference. She said she hoped I would still want to be involved in her child's life, as David's wife and Emma's stepmother, but she wanted to make sure everyone understood their proper roles and relationships. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes or so, with Emma explaining her position and me trying to comprehend how the daughter I had raised and loved for 15 years could suddenly decide our relationship wasn't real because we weren't biologically related. Emma kept stressing that she wasn't trying to hurt me and that she appreciated everything I had done, but she also kept repeating that I wasn't her real mother and her child would be fortunate to have a real mother from the beginning, unlike her. When we rejoined David and Sean in the living room, I could barely compose myself. David could tell something was amiss, but I didn't want to create a scene in front of Sean, so I waited until after they left to tell him what Emma had said. David was shocked and angry, and couldn't believe Emma would say such hurtful things to me after everything I had done for her over the years. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation with Emma over and over in my mind. I thought about all the times Emma had called me mom and told me she loved me and came to me for comfort and advice. I couldn't reconcile those memories with the cold, dismissive way she had spoken to me that evening. I wondered if Sean had influenced her thinking, or if she had always felt this way and just hidden it from me. Over the next few days, I kept waiting for Emma to call and apologize or explain that she had been having a bad day and didn't mean what she said. But no call came. David tried to talk to her, but she stood by everything she had said and insisted that she was just being honest about family relationships and didn't understand why we were making such a big deal out of it. She said she still loved me and wanted me to be part of her life, but she wanted to be clear about boundaries and roles especially now that she was going to be a mother. I realized that Emma's attitude toward me had fundamentally changed and wasn't going to revert. I had to decide how to respond to this new reality. I had always been the one who handled most of the financial support for Emma's needs and wants, from school supplies and clothes when she was younger, to helping with college expenses, and giving her money for emergencies or special occasions. David contributed too, but I had been the one managing most of the day-to-day financial decisions regarding Emma. I had saved a significant amount of money over the years specifically to help her with major life events like getting married and having children. I had already started making plans to help Emma and Sean financially with baby-related expenses, and I had been looking forward to being the kind of grandmother who could spoil her grandchild and help make their lives easier in whatever ways I could. I had imagined taking Emma shopping for maternity clothes and baby furniture, hosting a baby shower, setting up a college fund for the baby, and being actively involved in providing financial support throughout the child's life. But after Emma's declaration that I wasn't her real mother and her baby would have a real mother unlike her, I started to question whether I should continue providing financial support for someone who had made it clear that she didn't consider our relationship to be real or meaningful beyond the legal step relationship. I thought about all the money I had spent on Emma over the years, from everyday expenses to major purchases, and how I had always been happy to do it because I considered her my daughter and wanted to give her everything I could. I decided that if Emma wanted to draw clear boundaries between biological family and chosen family, then she should be prepared to live with the consequences of those boundaries. If I wasn't her real mother, then I shouldn't be expected to provide the kind of financial support that real mothers typically provide to their children. If she wanted to make it clear that I was just David's wife and her stepmother, then perhaps I should limit my involvement to whatever level she thought was appropriate for someone in that role. I talked to David about my decision, and he initially tried to convince me to reconsider. He thought I was acting out of hurt feelings and might regret cutting off financial support later. He pointed out that Emma was young and might not fully understand the implications of what she was saying, and that she might come to her senses after the baby was born, and she realized how much she needed our support. But I explained to David that this wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about respecting the boundaries that Emma had established and responding appropriately to her redefinition of our relationship. I told David that I had spent 15 years pouring my love and resources into Emma because I considered her my daughter. But if she didn't see our relationship that way, then I needed to adjust my expectations and behavior accordingly. I said that I would still be polite and cordial to Emma and would treat her the way I would treat any other young woman who was married to someone in my extended family, but I wasn't going to continue acting like her mother if she didn't want me to be her mother. David eventually understood my perspective, though he was still hoping that Emma would realize her mistake and apologize, which would allow us to return to our previous family dynamic. I told him that I hoped that would happen, too, but I couldn't continue to invest emotionally and financially in someone who had explicitly rejected the relationship I thought we had. I said that if Emma wanted to rebuild our relationship on different terms in the future, I would be open to that conversation. But for now, I needed to protect myself from further hurt and disappointment. I called my bank and canceled the automatic transfers I had been making to a savings account earmarked for Emma's future needs, and I also canceled plans to purchase baby furniture and other items I had been planning to buy for the nursery. I didn't announce these changes to Emma or make a big production out of it. I simply stopped doing the things I had been doing to provide financial support and assistance with various expenses and purchases. The first time Emma noticed the change was about 2 weeks later when she called to ask if I could help her, and Sean with the deposit for a larger apartment they wanted to rent before the baby was born. I told her that I wouldn't be able to help with that expense. When she asked why, I explained that since she had made it clear that I wasn't her real mother, I had decided to limit my financial involvement to whatever level was appropriate for someone in my actual role as her stepmother. Emma seemed surprised and upset and said she hadn't expected me to react this way to their conversation about family boundaries. She said she thought I would understand that drawing clear distinctions between biological and step relationships didn't mean she loved me less or wanted me to be less involved in her life. I told Emma that I did understand her position and I was simply responding to it in a logical way, because if I wasn't her real mother, then I shouldn't be expected to provide the kind of financial support that real mothers typically provide. Emma asked if I was punishing her for being honest about our relationship, and I explained that I wasn't punishing anyone. I was just adjusting my behavior to match the boundaries she had established. I said that if she wanted me to be involved in her life as a stepmother, then I would be involved at whatever level seemed appropriate for that relationship, but I wasn't going to continue acting like her mother if she didn't want me to fill that role. The conversation became tense, and Emma accused me of being petty and vindictive, which hurt because I had tried to explain that my decision was based on logic rather than emotion. I told Emma that I wasn't trying to hurt her, and I hoped she would be happy and successful in her life, but I also needed to protect myself from the confusion and pain that came from continuing to act like her mother when she had explicitly told me I wasn't her real mother. Emma hung up the phone without resolving anything, and over the next few weeks, she tried several times to get David to convince me to change my mind about providing financial support. David explained my reasoning to her, but also encouraged her to apologize and try to repair our relationship, which Emma refused to do because she said she hadn't done anything wrong by being honest about family relationships. As Emma's pregnancy progressed, there were several other occasions when she reached out for financial help with various expenses related to preparing for the baby. Each time, I politely declined and reminded her that I was limiting my involvement to whatever seemed appropriate for a stepmother rather than a mother. Emma became increasingly frustrated with this response and started complaining to David that I was being unreasonable and cruel by withdrawing support when she needed it most. David found himself caught in the middle of our conflict and tried to mediate by suggesting compromises that might satisfy both of us. But Emma refused to acknowledge that her comments about real mothers had been hurtful or inappropriate, and I refused to continue providing financial support for someone who had explicitly rejected our parent-child relationship. David eventually stopped trying to mediate and told Emma that she needed to work things out with me directly if she wanted to change the situation. Emma's biological mother had been absent from her life for most of the pregnancy, which was typical of their relationship pattern over the years. Emma had tried to reconnect with her biological mother a few times during her teens and early 20s, but these attempts usually ended in disappointment when her mother failed to follow through on promises or showed up intoxicated to planned meetings. I had always been supportive of Emma's desire to have a relationship with her biological mother, even though it sometimes meant dealing with the emotional aftermath when those attempts failed. About 2 months before Emma's due date, her biological mother contacted her and expressed interest in being involved with the baby. This seemed to reinforce Emma's belief that biological relationships were more important and meaningful than chosen relationships. Emma started talking about how excited she was that her child would have a real grandmother through her biological mother, and she seemed to think this validated her decision to draw clear boundaries between biological and step-family members. But I knew from years of experience that Emma's biological mother was unreliable and would likely disappoint Emma and potentially harm the baby if she was given access to them. However, since I was no longer in the role of mother or advisor, I didn't feel it was my place to warn Emma about the potential problems with relying on her biological mother for support and guidance. Emma gave birth to a healthy baby boy in early spring, and David and I visited the hospital to meet our new grandchild. Emma seemed happy to see us and was proud to show off the baby, but there was still tension in our relationship, and she made several comments about how wonderful it was that her son would have a real grandmother through her biological mother. I held the baby and congratulated Emma and Sean, but I kept my visit brief because I could feel the emotional strain of the situation. Over the next few months, Emma's biological mother did become more involved in her life and with the baby. But as I had expected, this involvement was inconsistent and sometimes problematic. Emma's mother would promise to babysit and then cancel at the last minute, or she would show up to visit when she had been drinking, or she would give parenting advice that was outdated or potentially harmful. Emma started to become frustrated with her biological mother's unreliability, but she was reluctant to admit that the relationship wasn't working out the way she had hoped. Meanwhile, Emma continued to struggle financially with the expenses of new parenthood, and she made several more attempts to ask me for help with various baby-related costs. David was also struggling with the situation because he wanted to be a supportive grandfather, but felt caught between his loyalty to me and his desire to help Emma. He started providing some financial assistance to Emma on his own, but he couldn't make up for all the support I had previously provided. Emma began to realize that she had been taking my financial contributions for granted and hadn't fully understood how much I had been helping her over the years. The situation came to a head when Emma's biological mother showed up to babysit. One evening while Emma and Sean went out for dinner, and she left the baby alone in the apartment while she went to buy cigarettes. A neighbor heard the baby crying and called the police, who found the infant unattended and contacted Emma and Sean. Emma was horrified and realized that her biological mother couldn't be trusted with her child's safety, but she was also embarrassed about the incident and worried it might affect her custody of the baby. Emma called me the next day, crying and upset, and asked if I would consider helping her find reliable childcare so she could return to work without worrying about her baby's safety. She admitted that her biological mother had turned out to be as unreliable as she had always been, and she said she was starting to understand why I had been such an important part of her life for so many years. I listened to her concerns and sympathized with her situation, but I also reminded her that she had established boundaries about our relationship and I was trying to respect those boundaries. Emma asked if we could talk about rebuilding our relationship and finding a way to move forward that would work for both of us. I told her that I would be willing to have that conversation, but it would need to include an acknowledgement that her comments about real mothers had been hurtful and unfair, and a genuine apology for dismissing the 15 years I had spent raising and supporting her. Emma was quiet for a long time, and then said she needed to think about what I had said. Several weeks passed without any further communication from Emma, and I assumed she had decided not to pursue reconciliation because she wasn't willing to apologize or acknowledge that she had been wrong. David continued to visit Emma and the baby regularly and kept me updated on their well-being, but he respected my decision not to resume financial support or active involvement until Emma was ready to address the issues between us. Then one evening, Emma showed up at our house unannounced, carrying her baby and looking exhausted and overwhelmed. She asked if she could talk to me privately, and we sat in the living room while David went to the kitchen to give us space. Emma told me that she had been thinking about our conversation and about everything that had happened since she announced her pregnancy. She realized that she had been wrong to dismiss our relationship and the role I had played in her life. Emma said that becoming a mother herself had helped her understand how much love and sacrifice was involved in raising a child, and she had come to appreciate that biology wasn't the only thing that made someone a real parent. She said that her biological mother had given birth to her, but I was the one who had actually raised her and been there for her through all the important moments of her life. She apologized for hurting me and said she hoped I would consider resuming our relationship as mother and daughter. I told Emma that I appreciated her apology and her willingness to acknowledge that she had been wrong, but I also explained that rebuilding trust would take time and couldn't happen overnight. I said that I had been deeply hurt by her rejection of our relationship and her dismissive comments about real mothers, and while I was glad she had come to understand the value of what we had shared, I needed to see consistent evidence that she truly valued our relationship before I could fully invest in it again. Emma asked what she could do to prove that she had changed her perspective and really wanted to rebuild our relationship. I told her that actions would be more important than words, and that I would need to see her treating me with the respect and consideration that she would show to someone she truly considered to be her mother. Over the following months, Emma made consistent efforts to include me in her life and her baby's life, asking for my advice on parenting decisions and inviting me to spend time with him regularly. She stopped making comments about biological versus step relationships and started referring to me as her son's grandmother without any qualifiers. I gradually began to provide limited financial assistance again, starting with small contributions to help with baby supplies and gradually increasing my involvement as Emma demonstrated that she truly valued our relationship. I was careful not to resume the same level of financial support immediately because I wanted to make sure that Emma's change of heart was genuine and lasting, rather than just a response to her immediate financial needs. The process of rebuilding our relationship took almost a year, but eventually we were able to establish a new dynamic that felt healthy and sustainable for both of us. Emma never again made comments about real versus fake family relationships, and she consistently treated me with the love and respect I had always hoped for from a daughter. I resumed providing financial support at levels that felt appropriate and comfortable, and I became actively involved in my grandson's life as his grandmother.